How's it going, everyone? It's your boy Flooded. Today I'm going to be doing a recap of the tickers that ran on Thursday, how you could have played them, where you could have played them using support and resistance, just, simple patterns, symmetrical triangles, pennants, bull flags, etc. And just how you could have played them off levels, which in my opinion is easily the most important quote-unquote indicator that exists today, along with price action. So yeah, let's get started with VVOS, one of Thursday's nicest runners. And as you can see here, our pre-market run saw a little bit of rejection at that 1.45 area, eventually got over it, went up to test that 185 area, saw some rejection, eventually got over it. And then as you can see here, sellers came in at that 240 level. Bunch of sellers came in, brought it all the way back down to 185, where we saw a bounce. Old resistance becomes new support, another example of that. Saw a very nice bounce, and this time we were able to test, almost 3, where we rejected and started forming this downtrend, where eventually we got over after bouncing twice on this 205 level, which I want to keep in mind. As you can see here, we saw 2 bounces off this $2 level right here, where first bounce, second bounce, and on the second bounce we actually broke the downtrend with a full candle close above the resistance. Ended up making a nice move to 235, where we rejected, came back down to this earlier support. So this is where I want to be a present buyer, but unfortunately in this case it did not hold. So say I did enter at this level right here for a bounce to 235, personally me, I would have stopped out right at this candle under the support. Perfect stop, full candle close under that support. And if it retested it, eventually broke over it again, and the setup's looking good, I would just re-enter, cut my losses short and just re-enter, which honestly does happen a good amount. And in this case, we actually kept on coming down to that earlier level in pre-market, where we saw a bounce off, saw a very nice bounce, came back down to it, bounced, ended up creeping under it a little bit, but did not stay there for long. Ended up testing that $2 resistance again, which used to be our support. So another example of old support becomes new resistance once it is broken. So once we broke this level right here and we came under it, this line begins acting as our new resistance, because it used to be old support. And as you can see here, a perfect example that when we rejected, this line was acting as our resistance. Once we tested it again, we were able to get over it, but not for long. Retested it and broke under, saw a nice bounce from 188 support, and it just could not get over that 2.10 area, where sellers just came in every time it tested it and brought it all the way back down, and eventually just couldn't hold that 185 area either, and just drifted into after hours. So yeah, that's pretty much VVOS for Thursday. Let's go over MULN next. MULN, pre-market run. Next ticker, MULN. As you can see here, we started off right on market open with a dump all the way to 0.2. How could we possibly know there would be a bounce here? Well, actually, if you go back to the day before, on Wednesday, you could see that right as this thing touched that 0.29 level, buyers came and swept it all the way back up to 0.3. So we know buyers are waiting for that 0.29 level, to attack, to load up, and that's exactly what happened here. Again, as soon as we saw that dump to 0.29 area, buyers came in, took it all the way back up to 0.3, and this is where we saw that kind of downtrend forming. And eventually we were able to get that break over that, held it pretty nicely, as we then made a move all the way up to 0.32, and then that is where we started flagging, right? And eventually we broke that right here, got that full candle close above it with pretty nice buy-in volume as well to accompany it, and we ended up making a move all the way to 0.33. That is where we saw some rejection. I want to note that down as my resistance. Ended up getting a full candle close above that. Nice move all the way till 0.336. Could not get over that, rejected it. Came down to retest that old resistance where we saw a bounce again. Tested that new resistance of 0.336 where we rejected earlier. And It did get over it, got that full candle close, but unfortunately, fake out, could not hold, came back down to that support. And eventually, later on, we did actually end up breaking that resistance in after hours and hitting that 0.35 level. So yeah, that is pretty much it for MULN, how you could have played it using support and resistance, and I tried my best to simplify that as much as possible to where you guys could see these levels and hopefully learn from them. So yeah, let's move on to Kala. This one was a wild one. Kala started off market open at that 28.6 level, ended up testing 33, reject. So let's get started. Market open around 28.5, made a move all the way to 33.5. That is where we got rejected a bunch of times over here. Note that down as my resistance. I want to play it once it gets that candle close above it. Got that full candle close above resistance. You know, a much bigger candle close than me personally I was expecting when I was watching this. But all the way at 35.6, huge move. And we ended up forming this symmetrical triangle, which we break out perfectly from, and we get that full candle close above the resistance. Beautiful breakout with enough volume to justify the move. Ended up getting over that old resistance, that 43.10 area that we rejected earlier. Got that full candle close above it. It even retested it for 4 or 5 minutes, and beautiful bounce off the retest, beautiful curl, and ended up hitting that $50 level where we saw a little bit of rejection on a good amount of lower wicks here as well, and ended up just holding 50 beautifully and making a move all the way till 55. Rejected 55. I want to note that down as my rejection. Ended up coming back down to that 50, same area where we saw a little bit of lower wicks and some solid rejection there, and beautiful bounce off that support. Ended up testing 55 again, reject it once again, comes back down to that same support where we saw a bounce off earlier, and we see a small bounce, comes back down. And usually here, me personally, I would not have played it on this fourth bounce, because the more times something tests support, in a time frame, the higher chance it has every single time of breaking that support. And it had pretty much been, just sticking to the support for, pretty good amount of time, for about an hour now between this range. So yeah, this move was definitely predictable. And we ended up breaking under the support this time, finally, the fourth time. Actually, probably the fifth, sixth time. And it comes down to that old resistance where I mentioned earlier, where we rejected and we got over, retested, bounced. Comes down to that old resistance, which is now a new support. And we see a beautiful bounce from that level. Ends up coming to retest it again. Fakes out real quick. Stop loss orders get hit, and we see a bounce, but eventually it just drifted into after hours where we saw a couple nice pops. And yeah, Kala, a movie on Thursday, and it was an excellent runner. So many opportunities presented for us, as you can see from this chart alone. And yeah, that's pretty much the recap for Thursday. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure to join the Discord, link in bio.